And just to make it formal, let me just say that Scott is the webmaster for the Knight Digital Media Center and is involved with web operations for the UC Berkeley Grad School of Journalism, the J School over there. He's the author of O'Reilly's MP3, The Definitive Guide, and Peach Pit's The BIOS Bible. As you see, I wasn't making up that stuff about the BIOS. And on the side, he runs a web hosting company for independent journalists and artists, as well as the life goal tracking site Bucketlist that he'll be talking about tonight. He blogs irregularly at birdhouse.org/blog. So please welcome Scott Hacker.
Thanks, Kristen. Holy cow, I had no idea that was that interesting. Wow, and thanks for the invitation. I'm really excited to get to know BayCHI a little bit more. I haven't been really involved with the program before. Let me just make sure we get this thing connected. Come on, come on. There we go. Okay, we're working. So I'm going to talk tonight about a site that I've built where people go to log and catalog all the things they want to accomplish before they die. Something that started as a sort of simple idea and grew like a lot of website ideas. You know, it seems like a simple germ, but actually executing it involves a lot more. This is me in a top hat and monocle, dressed as Mr. Pennybags from the game of Monopoly last week. I was going to talk about some of the things I've written, but Christian has done that. This is my son with his butt sticking out of a basket in a beautiful photograph taken by my wife, and Miles is awesome. He's actually got his own little bucket list, which includes things like jumping from the top of the play structure. This is the Knight Digital Media Center, where I currently work. It's a satellite of the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. What we do is we bring in mid-career journalists who need digital media training. They have, experienced, accomplished careers as working journalists, but they don't know anything about Photoshop or Final Cut Pro or social networking or mashups or data visualization. So we do 6-day intensive boot camps, and we bring them in. I'm the webmaster for the site, and I write tutorials. I do some of the training. I also train the J School students themselves in web development skills, HTML, CSS, PHP, JavaScript. This is my hosting company, as Christian said, mostly focused on independent journalists and artists, kind of a word-of-mouth thing. I don't take open signups, but if somebody wants to, is interested, you can contact me about that. And the blog where I've been posting for 10 years now, birdhouse.org/blog. Enough about that. So a little bit of history. About 12 years ago at a party, somebody said, "Blinded by the Light, what are the next lyrics to that?" And I tried to remember, and I said something, and it was wrong, and we cracked up. And we started going around the party asking people what were the lyrics after Blinded by the Light, and everybody had a different response. And so I was just getting started with this Birdhouse Arts Collective, and so I decided, wouldn't it be fun to start listing these things? And I invited people to send them in via email. And they did that, and I was copying and pasting from emails into this very long web page. And then finally I thought, I need to start automating this, and so I built a FileMaker database that spit out HTML pages, and it's kept evolving, and then finally I learned PHP and MySQL through this site, the Archive of Misheard Lyrics, and it took off. It took off beyond my wildest expectations, and the traffic was really good, and the bounce rate was extremely low, and while I was watching the news organization, I was working with Ziff Davis, getting 2 and 3 pages per visit. I was doing 14 to 20 pages per visit on this thing. And I was like, wow, what a model here. You let the audience contribute the content, you get really high engagement ratios, people have a blast with it, and you make a little bit of money selling ads. So this went on for quite a while, and the big hassle with it started to be dealing with the backlog, because there was so much. I mean, everybody had these examples of misheard lyrics. One of my favorite ones of all time was the mishearance of David Bowie's Space Oddity, Ground Control to Major Tom, misheard as Clown Control to Mao Zedong. There were tons of great ones. So I built a user voting system, and I said, look, let the public deal with the backlog, and they can vote up the good ones and push the bad ones to the bottom, because there's no way I could automate it. I mean, there was so much crap being submitted. It was 80% crap. I couldn't just publish it all, because the site would have suffered. So I learned a lot about working with the public and user-generated content. Eventually, I just got sort of sick of the weekly dealing with the backlog stuff. Somebody contacted me saying, I have big ideas for this. I want to buy it from you, and we're going to have a kids version, and we're going to have T-shirts and board games and everything. And he was excited, and I said, okay, fine, it's time to move on. And so I sold the site. A couple months later, that's what he turned it into. This crappy corporate-looking thing. And he said, I want to change the domain. The domain was kissthisguy.com after the Jimi Hendrix song, Excuse Me While I Kiss This Guy, right? And he wanted to change it to funnylyrics.com. And I was like, you can't call it Funny Lyrics. It already says it's, it's not going to be funny. So we battled back and forth over this, and finally we just parted company. And after a while, I started missing it. As much as it was a lot of work, I really missed this model of dealing with user-generated content and databasing things and letting people have a good time. And at some point along the way, I had this idea that everybody had these sort of lists in their heads of the things that they wanted to accomplish before they died. And there was, of course, the movie, the Bucketlist. And I looked and saw there was a lot of Twitter accounts that cataloged these, and people would make blog entries with their lists. And I thought, what we really need is a way to let each goal have its own page that people can comment on, to inspire people by the goals that you post, to make it easy to copy somebody's goal into your own list and modify it. Ways to tell stories about the goals. That was what really seemed like the meat, was to get people to add notes and descriptions of how they accomplished the goal or how they intended to accomplish the goal, and to add media, images, and audio and video. And so I started building the site. The other thing that was going on was that at work at the Knight Center, I had been working with a Python-based web framework called Django, and had fallen head over heels in love with it. And the problem was that site was mostly built, and I wanted to build something from scratch. So I wanted a development platform to play on, and I thought, perfect. So we went, looking for the domain, and it was, they were all registered. And I started talking to the squatters, and as it turned out, one was right in Oakland, and it was not a squatter, it was just a guy who intended to do something but never had, and he sold me the domain for a really reasonable rate. So I got bucketlist.org. And succeeded in building it. It took about 6 months of evenings and weekends, and I was very happy with the results. What happened, though, was it was a lot easier to make it easy to do those things than it was to get people to actually tell stories and add media and add videos. We'll talk more about that a little bit. But since launching, we've developed, we're so close, 949,666 items. We're just on the brink of 100,000 items, and 5,618 lists. And they're being added at a rate of 10 to 50 lists a day, depending on whether there's incoming linkage. So that, the traffic's doing really good, but there's some challenges associated with it. I'll just give you a really quick tour of the. Am I on two mics at once here? Is that what's going on? The king of all media. So, everybody has their own list. You can rearrange your list by just dragging and dropping items. You can sort of set priorities that way. You've got a quick view of the things that you want to do and the things that you've already completed. We use little indicators to show whether people have added media to those items. Everybody has a profile, so you can learn more about that person and contact them on Twitter or Facebook. We have really detailed settings that let people decide how much or how little email they want to get from the site. For example, you can get emails when somebody copies one of your goals into their list, whether you want to use your name on the site, whether you want to get contest information, the typical stuff. When you are browsing the site, so this guy wants to live in Switzerland, and I might say, I want to do that too. So I click Me Too, and now a copy of this item is now in my list, and I can go ahead and edit it. Notice I can't change the title of a copied item, and the reason for that is we want to be able to track and group the the things that people are doing that are the same. So if I let you change the title of an item that's been copied, over time it would change, and one person might be like, get the Democrats out, and the other person get the Republicans out, and they'd all be grouped as if they were the same item. But you can change the description and the notes. And we've got a nice little rich text editor here, the typical stuff. Now, let's say I want to add some media to this site. Let's say I want to add this, let's pick something at random here. So I don't have to go and grab the embed code for this, right? Because one of the big challenges when you let people use embed code is it implies allowing them to use JavaScript and iframes and all kinds of things that can be dangerous. So instead, I built it so that you only have to link to the page that hosts the piece of media. And that could be on Flickr or Vimeo or YouTube. I can add some tags. So we're using a technology called oembed. Are you guys familiar with this word, oembed? A few nods. So oembed has really gone a long way towards solving this dilemma where WordPress and Drupal and all kinds of CMSs want to make it easy for people to embed stuff from other sites. These sites always give you embed code, but by allowing embed code, you're opening up security risks. So oembed says, just give me the URL of the page that hosts it, and if that external site supports this oembed protocol, we'll send back the actual embed code and replace your link with that embed code. So by using a service called embed.ly, they support almost 200 external media sites. So my users can embed content that's already up on those sites pretty easily. And now I can say I've completed this item. I mark it off. And so we prompt the user, you're not done yet. This site is all about juicy stories. Tell us how you completed the task. Add some photos and video. Go nuts. So if they haven't already, we take a second opportunity to encourage them. Also, we acknowledge that people may be entering stuff from the past, so you can change the completion date on things. Pretty much the stuff you'd expect. You can delete items. We give each user a trash. They can go back and restore things. The usual, social stuff here. So that's the also, you can follow users just like you would on other social networks. So I'm already following this one. When you follow someone, you are able to go into your following list and you can see all the items that have recently been added or completed by the people you follow. You also get RSS feeds that track those things, and you get a monthly email sort of digest summarizing what's been added or completed by the people you follow. You can see everyone I follow, who's following me. And then we have a tag view, so all these items are tagged. I need to, whoa. What's going on there? That was working an hour ago.
In this case, that message isn't right.
Which, Bazinga's not right?
No, it's not your fault.
Oh, because it is my fault. That's right. There we go. That was the FAQ. Huh. I just looked at that half an hour ago. That's very strange. When you, what the hell? What is going on? What is going on? Featured. I broke the interwebs. I'm flushing.
And show us how.
I think we may just be experiencing a little overload. I'm getting to the point where I need to move this site off of my shared hosting. So this is on my own hosting company, which is just one little shared server. And I think it's pretty much time to get it onto a dedicated server. When you copy someone else's item into your own list, that item is voted, it gets an upvote. In addition, any item in the system can be given an upvote. And then there are items that I go through personally as an editor and I call the most interesting. I tend to favor the ones that have stories and media. So you can see that these are all the ones that are featured. These also get pumped out into our Twitter feed. So I wrote a Python script that grabs a random thing from the featured set every few hours and sends it out that way. So I can vote on this. That gives it an upvote. Anyway, back on the featured list, assuming this is going to work, we see a sub-tab. Okay, this is scaring me a little bit. come on, I know, crossing fingers. Most liked. So we can see from this list the items that have either been upvoted the most or copied the most. And I like to fool myself that this gives me some kind of glimpse into the public consciousness or subconscious of what people really desire, but I know in my heart that that's not true. They're really just kind of memes that are floating around the site. So anyway, this stuff can be sliced and diced any which way to Sunday. The top items in the top right are, again, these are the featured items that are being pulled up for random ones per page. So yeah, I already told you about the numbers. People are averaging around 17 items per list. The smallest one's like 2 items, and the big ones, there are people with 250 life goals in their list. And people are on average completing about 16%. Yeah, I talked about that. I knew from the start that this site was going to really invite some bad behavior. There'd be a lot of people trying to use it as a marketing platform or to do spammy stuff or to proposition others. We've seen a little bit of that, but during the sign-up, I'm super clear. You know, I just have a zero tolerance, no nonsense policy. Say, you know, it's simple. No porn, no mean-spirited stuff, no trying to use the site as a platform to promote your business. Don't post anything you wouldn't want your mother to see. Users are encouraged to flag inappropriate material, so I do get emails sometimes when something's been flagged. We'll come back to that. Basically, if you post mean things, dangerous things, or anything that even vaguely looks like spam, we'll delete your account and everything you posted so far, no questions asked. And I've only had to do that like 4 times in a year, which makes me really happy, actually. Kind of restores my faith in humanity a little bit. But it's not all gone perfectly. There have been a lot of aspects of the site that have worked out in surprising ways. I think anybody who does user interaction work knows that the way you think they use the site is not going to be the way they always use the site. And that goes both for the kinds of goals they post and the actual interface stuff. So one of the hardest things has been getting people to tell stories. So I did a little query and found that only about 15% of the items have any text content in the body area at all. Which is a bummer to me, and I really want to bring that level up. One of the things that I did a few months ago was a contest saying, you know, for every goal that has some text and at least one piece of media, just give it this particular tag, and we'll enter it into a contest, and then we'll read all the entries and give away an iPod. And we did that, and it was quite successful. But as I was looking at the contest entries at the end of that month, something struck me, and I still can't figure it out. If any of you have any insight, I'm open. But all the contest entries but one out of like 50, they're all women. It's like, that's interesting, and I'm not sure why that was. One of the things that I've tried to do to encourage people was I noticed that a lot of people were going back to their own items and adding descriptive text in the comments. And it's like, well, that's kind of missing the point of comments. Comments are for other people to start a conversation about your stuff. If you have more to say, put it in the body. So I tweaked the site so that you could only leave comments if you're not the owner of the item. After a conversation has started, then the owner can participate. And that actually helped quite a bit by disallowing people from editing their own stuff by adding comments. The very first person to really use the site the way I wanted to see it be used was this woman, Shanna, who had discovered it, and she went skydiving for the first time, kind of a typical goal, but she had photos of herself, and she had a nice story, and she even embedded a video, and that was really gratifying to see. The winner of the contest was this woman who went on a tour through Machu Picchu, and described it in excruciating detail, and again had lots of photos. But this is, I don't necessarily want every goal on the site to be travel and adventure, right? I mean, perfect my spaghetti sauce is just as legitimate of a goal, or get the other guy elected is just as good of a goal. What I really don't want is for the site to be used for trivial stuff that's just like something to do, like get a Calvin Klein shirt, and we see that kind of stuff. It's like, that's not a life goal. That's not something you want to do before you die. That's something to get done this weekend, But there's not much I can do about that. This thing takes a while to wake up. I need to keep it awake. Come on. Try again. Bring this forward. There we go. Another thing that's been surprisingly difficult, and this may seem trivial, but it's really hard to get people to add avatars or icons to their accounts. And you wouldn't think so, because everybody on Facebook and Twitter has one. You know, when people follow me on Twitter and they don't even haven't even bothered to put an icon, I don't even look at their feed. I'm not even going to consider them. It's like, it just seems like the first thing you do when you get an account somewhere. But really low success rates with this. And so I made a policy that, you know, I wasn't going to feature anybody's content on the site that didn't have one. And I built in some little machinery so that if you had created a new account and had added at least 3 items but still hadn't put up an avatar, you know, I threw up a little pop-up screen to remind them and give them a link to go do it right now. That helped a little bit. Still, we're only at about 67, 70%. It's helping a little bit. And then the bane of my existence, freaking Facebook. For more reasons than one. But the big reason is that Facebook is the internet to so many people now. It's like everything else is just some externality. Oh, every now and then I click a link on Facebook to go check something out. But they think this is how the internet works, and that especially the privacy enclaves of Facebook are how things should work. And to me, that is what's broken about Facebook. You know, the healthy internet is wide open, right? If it's worth putting online, it's worth putting out to everyone. You're on the internet because you want to have reach, right? You want to get a message out there. And this idea that you should be able to post stuff just to this little circle of friends, it seems ridiculous to me and very dangerous to the health of the internet. So, you know, I'm constantly asked, how can I mark my items private? And my response is, if you want a private bucket list, put it on a piece of paper. Put it on your desktop. What do you want a social network? Why would you put a private thing on a social network? This doesn't make sense to me. I know that my position on this is unpopular. You know, my way on Facebook is set those privacy controls all the way open, and then just don't put things on the internet that don't belong on the internet. So dealing with this user assumption. Number 2 is, you know, they want me to have Facebook apps and things, which I do intend to do. Facebook used to have those tabs, and you could build an application that would live in a tab. And I spent a week building an application to live in a tab, and just as I was about to go live with it, Facebook closed that down. You can no longer put an application in a tab. Thank you very much. You know, it's a moving target, and you know, if you want to hitch your train to that wagon, you gotta play their way. There's still things I can do, and I will be doing. I do run a Facebook page for Bucketlist, and it's quite popular, and I communicate with the users there as well as on Twitter. Empty calories. So again, you know, my bounce rate is really good. Time on site is really good compared to, you know, news sites that I've worked with. I'm happy with that. It's not doing what Kiss This Guy did. It's doing like 7 pages a visit. But here's the problem, is that most of these pages, you know, this one's an exception. If we just look at, let's pick some random person here. So here's a typical page, and I'm seeing more stuff on here because I'm logged in as the admin. So, you know, I see edit and mark item complete because I'm admin. Most people would just see this block up here and this block down here. So basically the content of the page is the item title, and there's nothing else there. So there's no potential for SEO value. There's no content to be studied by search engines or by users. So this is what I mean by empty calories. It's like, if I can't get people to post stories in media, what do I have? You know, there's potentially a lot of value to having each item on its own page, but the reality is that 85% of the pages are these empty calories. So I talked a little bit about OEmbed. Again, it's just been wonderful because my first assumption going in was that, boy, I need to think about how to host a lot of images, how to host a lot of video, doing the compression. I mean, that stuff is difficult, it's resource intensive. And the fact of the matter is that people already have their Flickr and their photo bucket accounts, and they're putting images on Facebook, and they're putting video on YouTube and Vimeo, and I'm able to leverage that. And not only that, but all the stuff that people are putting out there to share, the default settings on Flickr, actually not on Flickr, but the default settings on many of the sites is for things to be public. And you were invited to embed it, which means that people can illustrate their stories by grabbing an image from Flickr that's not theirs. And that's okay, I encourage that. If the person who owns that content doesn't want it embedded, they have that control. The copyright weenie in me felt a little bit weird at first, but I realized that's how it's structured. One of the I still do get requests from users saying, I don't do media on those sites, why can't I upload it directly? And what they don't understand is that I'm one guy who does this in his spare time. And I'm not a startup with deep pockets and funding, and developing the kind of resources it would take to do real-time video compression and hosting is just not going to happen. The other hassle with this is that Facebook has actually eclipsed Flickr as an image host. Flickr does phenomenal amounts of images, and Facebook does even more now. And you can set your images on Facebook to be fully public. That's good. But unfortunately, they don't play the O-embed game. So I can't tell my users, embed an image from Facebook just like you embed it from any of the other 292 providers. You can't just take the URL the page is on and have it work. Facebook has a little, I'll just show you here. So I'll grab some random page here. Look at this new JavaScript pop-up thing. Let's see, share. No. Yeah, they've changed all this interface. Make profile picture. Dang it, actually this has gotten a lot harder. Okay, ampersand feeder, I don't see feeder. Oh, theater. You are brilliant, thank you. So, yeah, that was really good to know. So with any other embed supporting service, you would take that URL. But if you're trying to share a Facebook image, there's this little tiny thing down here, share this photo with anyone by sending this public link. I don't know why they do that. What is the point of that? But it's really hard to explain to my users. And they're like, your Facebook embedder doesn't work. I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do to fix that. That's the way Facebook set it up. So those have been the hassles with using O-embed. Other than that, it's working really, really well. Return traffic. So, people are going to go to other social networks all the time to see, recent news. And we get a little bit of that, but a lot of the traffic, if not the majority, is people coming to enter their lists. And they kind of see the list as something they do once and then they're done. Yeah, I got my bucket list up. Every now and then I'll return to it to check something off. But it's not the kind of thing they're going in every day to see what's been added and what's new. And I want it to become that kind of site where there's enough interesting stuff and a real-time feed. But right now, there's a lot of people who just sort of see it as a kind of a one-time visit. And I think the traffic could be a lot better. The things I'm doing to address that are email. So you get an email when somebody copies one of your items into their list. By default, you get a monthly email describing the goals by the people you follow. Yeah, I'm not sure what else I can do besides that. Open to ideas. Startup mode, again, I keep getting emails that come from people who seem to assume that every site on the internet is run by a corporation or somebody with angel investments. When the site was first launched and it got reviewed in, was it waytotheweb.com? One of the comments on there is like, their design team sucks. And, it's like, I know there's a lot of UX people and UI people in here. I'm not one of those guys, right? I'm primarily a code guy, and the design was the thing I did at the very, very end. I was sweating it. I knew I had to come up with something. I was looking at other sites for inspiration, but, it's not like I designed it in Photoshop first and cut it up. I mean, I started with 960 grid CSS, and I started slapping in CSS until I was happy with it. Yeah, I'd love to have a better design, but I have to make some money off the site first, or find a generous friend, or develop those skills. So that's just people's assumptions. Again, the laundry list type items, which have been frustrating to me, just the things that I don't think count as life goals that people keep throwing in there. I need to get that Calvin Klein shirt. Stuff that's been flagged. So here's where stuff starts to get puts me into interesting moral territory where suddenly it was unanticipated. We're sure there's going to be some offensive stuff, and yeah, I'm going to delete offensive stuff, but the question of what is offensive and to whom, it can be a real stickler. There are a lot of people who want to kiss on top of a Ferris wheel. Wonderful. There's also a lot of people who want to have sex on a pool table. Fine, not my thing, but good for you. It's not offensive to me in the least. Except that my nieces are on the site too, and their parents don't really want them to see that, so what do I do with that? And then there's give head to two guys at the same time. Now, I don't have a moral problem with that either, but something in that crosses the line from have sex on a pool table to give head to two guys at the same time. And I'm not sure what that line is. Now, I went ahead and deleted that one, right? That was flagged as offensive. And sometimes I really disagree with the things that people are flagging as offensive. And sometimes I dialogue back and forth with the people and explain to me, why do you think that's offensive? And usually they're just right-wing Christians, and that's just the way they see the world. They can't really defend it. So I'm sort of constantly making these judgments. But every now and then, this flagging system is really, really helpful because there's so much content, new content coming in every day, I can't possibly look at it all. And there is, genuinely gross stuff, which I'll show you in a second. No, I won't show you, you know what I mean. We'll talk about. There's also so much wonderful stuff going on the site, stuff that really, really makes me excited and happy to have done this. Simple, innocent things like, the second most liked item on the whole site is passionately kiss in the rain. I don't know what it is about this, but it just ignites something in everyone. It's like, I want to do that, which I think is great. They're like mini memes. Once they start copying around, then more people copy them. The word love shows up so much. 2,100 goals, so that's, what is that, like 2%, have to do with love in some way. Find the love of my life. Have sex under the stars with the one I love. Tell my dad I love him. Find my soulmate. Lots and lots of stuff like that. Again, very personal. But what's really been encouraging is how many people are interested in volunteerism of some kind. I'm seeing tons of this. More than 500 goals have the word volunteer in them in some way. Things like work with the Humane Society, go on AIDS walks, work at a soup kitchen, volunteer at an animal shelter, go tree planting, work at the Children's Hospital, get involved in tsunami relief, work on blood drives, help with disasters, work at the Sloth Sanctuary, Special Olympics, orphanages, it just goes on and on. And people are also copying these goals, and I didn't see this coming, and it's been really gratifying to see it. Simple little things like pay for a stranger's groceries, and there's actually a lot of people doing this, and people who've checked it off, they've actually gone and done it, and they got the idea from the site. So some other examples of just wonderful kind of crazy things, things like sleep in an igloo, or get a tattoo of the Lorax, who's kind of a symbol of, corporate environmentalism. See the Aurora Borealis, explore a lava tube, blow $50 on nothing. Okay, maybe that's not a wonderful one, that's a weird one. Ride a penny farthing. Those are the old bikes with the big front wheel. People actually going out and doing that. Spend the night in an underwater hotel. See the Hobbit huts in New Zealand. Eat octopus. Ride an ostrich. Plant a time capsule. Participate in a flash mob. Go wingsuiting. Get hypnotized. This stuff just goes on and on. It's all I can do to not copy all these into my own list, except that I know I'll never get them done. Excuse me a second. I'm also discovering lots of things that I'd never heard of. I'm sure that's true for a lot of the readers as well. This one turned me on so much because, seriously, when I was a kid and I had a hamster who had one of those little hamster wheels, I used to fantasize, that there would be like an adult-sized hamster wheel that you could crawl around in. And sure enough, there's this thing called Zorb. There are a number of these little Zorb tracks in New Zealand, but it's two plastic balls, one within the other, and they fill the inner ball full of water, and you get in your shorts, and you just go bouncing down hills or on these tracks, and it looks so fun. Or drawing Zentangles, and it's a drawing technique that anybody can learn, and there are videos on the internet to teach yourself how to do this, and all kinds of crazy designs that even people who have no drawing skills at all can do. Guerrilla gardening is the act of beautifying your neighborhood, so going to the neighbor's ugly yard and planting something in the middle of the night and sneaking away. And this actually reminded me, because I'd been at Maker Faire a couple of years ago, and somebody was making seed bombs, and I just walked past and he pressed these little balls into my hand that looked like rabbit pellets or something, and I was like, what is this? And he said, they're poppy seeds. He said, throw them out your car window and into an empty field and beautify the neighborhood. Right on. So that falls under something called guerrilla gardening, which people are actually doing. And then there's a lot of sort of just unexpected ways that people are using the site. Some of them are harsh realities, and some are just sort of technically unexpected. Well, this isn't so harsh, but it's just been really surprising to me to see the kinds of things that people say they want to accomplish in their lives that I just think of as normal. It's like a lot of people want to eat sushi or try sushi. It's like, you've never tried sushi? Really? But I know when I visit my relatives in the Midwest, they don't have sushi restaurants, so maybe it's not so weird. People who've never gone skinny dipping, never driven a stick shift, never gone snorkeling, never seen redwoods, never been to a drive-in, never been told I love you during sex. And a lot of these in the popular items, it's like, wow, yeah, please do. And then there was this one, which was the first one that kind of freaked me out. This happened about a month after the site was launched. This woman had a goal that she wanted to run over a snake. I'm like, what? Why would you run over a snake? And I looked at her profile, and she was a Christian evangelist. And usually I try not to engage with my users on a sort of moral level, but I had to ask her. I said, what would Jesus do? Would he run over a snake? And she said, she just got all huffy. You don't know me. You don't know my experience with snakes. You have no idea what I've been through. And, I didn't go farther than that. But I'm thinking, it's like, I don't care if you were bitten and almost died. It's not the snake's fault. A snake is a snake. It's going to do what it's going to do. And she accomplished the goal. And then she had people commenting, he's like, good for you, sister. So, okay, I may not agree with it, but I leave it be on the site, even though it makes me sad. Hell of a lot of people want to witness paranormal activity. I'm a skeptic, and I don't believe anybody has ever witnessed paranormal activity because I don't think there is any such thing. But I sometimes will post a link to the Randy Foundation, randy.org, in the comments and say, if you were ever able to do this, please contact this guy at randy.org because you could win $1 million. And I don't know where that's going. Here's where it got harsh. Somebody posted the goal to kill someone. This guy had 3 items in his list. One was to join the mafia, one was to own a Glock, and the other was to kill someone. And fortunately, this got flagged, and and I went with my policy, and I just deleted his account with no comments. Yeah, so there's messed up people out there, and they want to broadcast it for some reason. Okay, a little weird, punch a man in the face. If this is posted by a man, you kind of interpret it one way, and if it's posted by a woman, you interpret it quite another way. Could be a woman who's just had enough of their shit, I don't know. So that I thought was mostly just entertaining. I left it. Become a 24-hour day stoner. That's your life goal. Yeah. No, I actually know the person who posted this, and he was only half joking, but this has been a very much copied item on the site and gets frequently flagged by people who are offended by it. Try flipper pie. So that freaked me out because flipper to me is the dolphin, right? Pa, love Pa. And I was like, what are you talking about? But I looked it up, and flipper pie isn't what I thought it was at all. According to Wikipedia, it's a traditional Eastern Canadian meat pie made from young harp seal flippers. Uh-oh. It is specific to the province of Newfoundland and commonly eaten in April and May during the annual seal hunt. Okay. Hey, at least it's not flipper. This one was really heavy. I'll just read you the whole. She did post text. When I was young, I fell into some hard times. I made a decision I was not proud of and started an addiction I couldn't quit. It took years for me to defeat this, and now I am placed with a reminder of my past for eternity. At times I'm thankful for the reminder as it keeps me pushing myself to be better, but most times I'm haunted by it. Others judge me and treat me different when seeing them. Employers and clients are discouraged and stray before giving me a chance if they're visible. I pushed myself enough to defeat this, and now I think it's time to stop punishing myself and get the surgery to have the scars removed. They'll never be completely gone, but with this surgery, it gives me the chances to live my life with the same opportunities and respect as everyone else. So, I think this person was a cutter and is now an adult and dealing with it, and it's like, and lots of supportive comments on that one too. Have sex on a pool table, we talked about that. And then there's unclear on the concept. So this is a person whom I love very much, my dear 77-year-old dad, who needed help creating his account, so I helped him. And then he emailed me, so I got my bucket list posted. So excited. He posted every single item in the content of a single post. So, the idea that he might want to check these off, might want to reorder them, that somebody might want to copy one into their own list, all lost on him, And he was the first, but he was not the only one. I've had quite a few people do this. And I usually will leave a comment, and then nothing happens. And I can either take it upon myself to do all that manual work or just leave it be, and I usually just leave it be. But, this is a perfect example of UX designers thinking they know how people are going to use a site, and they just want to do it. So it's just easier to copy and paste. I'm done. For consistency, I really didn't want some people posting things in all caps and some things with no initial cap. For safety, I didn't want any HTML tags in titles, obviously. And then another weird thing people were doing was that even though I showed you right at the start how easy it is to reorder your list by dragging things up and down, a lot of people were entering things like number 1 parenthesis, goal, 2 parenthesis. It's like, well, when you decide that the priority has changed, are you going to edit every single one of these 59 items? So I basically wrote a filter, so every time an item is saved or created, the title is run through and it's changed to all lowercase, and then I initial cap it. I strip any digits and punctuation marks from the start, strip HTML tags. It must be surprising to some people when they type something in and something else comes out, but it's done a lot to guarantee consistency on the site, which I think helps a lot. And then sanitizing input. So, I showed you initially that we have this rich text editor. And that's great. Everybody knows how to use it. But we have to be really, really careful about people inserting anything dangerous, especially any kind of JavaScript or embed code. So on the rich text editor, obviously I can tweak it so it only shows the buttons I want them to have. But that's not enough, because any savvy user knows that a rich text editor on the web is only there by the sake of JavaScript. And if the user turns off JavaScript in the browser, then they get a plain old rich text field they could paste anything into. So I had to both control the buttons, and I had to write a back-end filter or processor that would scan the text and only allow certain HTML tags and their attributes and discard anything else. So if anybody does turn off JavaScript, tries to post legitimate or illegitimate stuff, but that contains the illegal tags, which is basically everything except for the very basics, their content's going to come out all cattywampus. But it's a heck of a lot better than having JavaScript injected in bad ways. So this was exciting. I got an email a couple of days ago from a teacher in Texas saying, can you help my student with activate her registration? She kind of messed it up, and so I helped her. And then I got another one, and she said, can you help another student? I said, what are these students using Bucketlist? And she's like, oh, yeah, we have this Carpe Diem section of our English class, and we've required every student in the class to have an account on your site. And to actually like put on goals that they can accomplish, and it's just like trying to get the students out of their chairs and doing stuff in the world, and I was just really excited and proud about that, so put that in here. So I still got a lot to do. You know, I work on the site in the margins at night when I don't have any other freelance stuff going on. I desperately want to get a good mobile site and or mobile app. I haven't decided, you know, if I do a mobile site, then it accommodates all smartphones. But if I do a mobile app, then I get into the app stores, and I could actually sell the app for 99 cents, which would help me to monetize the site, because I really, really don't want to put ads on it. I want to let people geolocate their goals. I actually have working code for that from work. I can transplant that in pretty easily. Lots more to do with Facebook integration. And then I want to start a badges system to let people earn badges for primarily as a way to encourage them to add stories and media. But also for a certain number of items, for getting your avatar uploaded, for having a certain number of your items copied into other lists, and let people have little competitions or whatever to develop their reputation on the site, but mostly as a way of just encouraging repeat traffic. So at this point, I was going to start talking about the platform and start with it kind of being high level, and then dive into code a little bit. That is until eyes glaze over. Don't want to bore anybody. But because this second portion is so different from the first, any questions on stuff we've talked about so far? Oh, did I surprise you? The microphone
No,
thing?
no, you're good.
Okay.
We like to capture the question.
Okay, good.
So you talked about the issue of not enough people flesh out their items.
Mm-hmm.
So can you think of ways to possibly have the community help there, right? Like lots of people like to give advice. So if you could maybe categorize and bucket things and say, these are travel goals that people have had, and they said Hawaii, and then somebody can say, oh, well, the way you accomplished that in Hawaii, or, give them some bit of kind of community support on the content needed, which they would then have to, I don't know, massage or approve or something, but.
Right. Well, we do have the tag system that I tried to show in with Bazinga. So that's certainly how things like travel and Hawaii are grouped, and people. But I could give more prominence to those. I think a good way to do it might be to have a "I need help with this" flag, and then there'd be a list of all the things that people need help or want to do as part of a group or something. They could even organize flash mobs that way. So that's actually, I was going to write down suggestions that came up tonight. So let me start doing that.
I think just categorization for browsing could also help.
Right, so again, that's what the tagging system does. I need to trim it. I think what I'm doing is making way too many queries on that view. Or do you have other ideas of ways to categorize? You mean like broader level categories? Not
Well, I
such.
don't know how aggressively the tag system is used, but I was thinking of machine learning,
Oh, sorry.
topic categorization.
Right, so yeah, tags are tricky because they are so granular, and tags can work two ways. They can either be tagged by the editors on your site, or in this case, by the users. And when you put it in the user's control, you get a lot of weird tags in there. The letter A is a very popular tag, and so I need some processing and parsing to deal with that. And people who want to run 100 kilometers will use a tag of 100, and it's like that's not really helpful to anybody. So you're right, some kind of like pick list of something that I've predefined as 10 big buckets that they can put things into. That's actually a really good suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, I was thinking about the question of how to get people to come to the site right here.
There you are. Sorry. Right.
How to get people to come to the site other than to update their bucket list. And I was wondering if, I initially thought of like a dating site almost. You want to run a 5K, and then you find out someone else does and they live nearby, you guys run it together, or you volunteer together. Do you have any cases where people actually are forming relationships based on similarities in their bucket list?
I don't see all the content by a long shot. There's a lot going on that I don't know about. But I do get a copy of all comments emailed to me just so I can make sure that there's nothing weird going on. Yeah, I did get a weird one just recently. This is just an aside, sorry. Where they said they wanted to go skinny dipping, and some strange guy chimed in. It's like, hey, I'm happy to come out there and help you. And I thought, well, that's a little creepy. And I left another comment to the original poster saying, hey, you can delete other people's comments if you need to. And the guy immediately responded, as like, you small dick son of a bitch. And so I just deleted his account, boom. So that's why I get all the comments emailed to me, to keep those people off the site, because I just don't want it to devolve into YouTube, Anyway, back to your question about getting people to help each other with their goals. It's somewhat similar to what he was talking about, and I think putting a "I need help with this" flag on there would be good. Well, that's the automation portion of it, and your question is like, are people forming these relationships? Yes, I'm seeing people getting to know each other over certain topics, whether they've actually met, because there's a geographical aspect. It's like, just because we're both interested in river kayaking doesn't mean it's feasible for us to meet. So that may be happening, I'm just not aware of it.
Is there a location in their profile?
Yeah, you can say what city and state you're from. And again, I'm going to be adding geolocation to the goals, and that will help because then I can draw map mashups and things that show where different kinds of activity are happening. Yeah.
So along with the questions you've gotten so far, have you actually gone out and spent any time with real people using your site, and you use that as a way to understand what's working for them, what's not, what might entice them to come back and put more content in and come back more often?
User testing.
Not user testing as much as spending time with users, meaning going out and spending a little time, an hour or two, with various people as they're actually doing, interacting with your site and that kind of thing.
No, the closest I've come was before I did the official launch. I did a soft launch and invited everybody I knew to try it out and give me feedback. And I actually did another 3 weeks of work on the site before the official launch, based on their feedback. But that wasn't me going and sitting with them and asking them to accomplish certain tasks. It was more just getting their generic feedback. So yeah, that would be great. Any others? Okay, now's the part where I bore you to tears. No, I hope not. How many programmers in the room? Cool, all right, so a third to a half. I'll try to keep it relatively high level. We may dive into some code later. So the stuff that Einstein's writing on the board, I don't use any of that. I just like the picture. I'm not an ASP guy. I do some PHP work, but mostly Python, Django. Just before I dive into the rest, so in addition to Django, we use the 960.js grid system, which is a fantastic CSS layout framework. All the interactivity happens through jQuery. And embed.ly is a really cool service. I talked about oembed. If you want to implement something like oembed, all you have to do is go to embed.ly. They give you a one-liner that you can, of JavaScript you put in your header, and then it just scans the page for links that link to any of the oembed supported providers. It's that easy. TweetPy is a Python library for speaking to Twitter. I use the Bitly API for doing URL shortening in the when users can tweet from the site, or for the cron job Python script that grabs the featured posts and tweets out. If you do write a goal directly into the site to Twitter, I use a character counter, blah, blah, gradient buttons. All right. So Django, let me start even one level up. So everyone knows what a content management system is. If I were to characterize hand building a site from scratch versus using a content management system versus using a framework, I would say it this way. When you build everything from scratch, you're like the carpenter who goes out and gets all the boards and all the nails, and you plan it all out, and you put everything together exactly the way you want it, and you have complete control, but you're also responsible for every single little thing. If you use a content management system, it's more like buying a house already prefab. You can put different drapes on it. You can add on an addition on the top of the garage, whatever. But so much of the architecture is in place. and it can be very difficult to say, tear down this wall, I want to move this over here. A framework is more akin to building one of those kit houses, where you sort of like, here come the walls, here come the windows, okay, now we need a plumbing system. So with a framework, it's sort of like nothing is assumed, right? There's nothing turnkey. You install Ruby on Rails or Django. You don't get a working site out of the box. You just get something very raw. But if you want to add RSS feeds to any object in your system, you can do that because there's an RSS framework. You want to add comments to any object in your system, you can do that because there's a comments framework. You need a good way to query your data models, you can do that because there's a really good querying system. So these days I'm really down on content management systems, except for simple sites where I use WordPress. Basically WordPress for everything simple, Django for everything complicated. I skipped the whole middle layer. And that was exactly why we had made that change at work. We were just fed up with content management systems. Django was developed, came out of Lawrence, Kansas, from Lawrence, Kansas City Journal World. A bunch of Python developers were there, and they were slowly building this system to support that site. And at a certain point, they open sourced it. It started to take off. It's now used. It's really popular amongst news publications. It's used on michaelmoore.com, theonion.com, the Bay Citizen here in the Bay Area, Mahalo Answers. If anybody uses Instagram for photo sharing on the iPhone, that's a Django site. It's used in a lot of places you're sort of not aware of because it's behind the scenes. But it's extremely object-oriented because Python is extremely object-oriented, very, very clean. And everything about the way Django is built sort of adheres strictly to the Python philosophies of development. I just want to put this image in your mind because some of the examples I'll show you in a minute will relate to it. So you have to imagine that each of those boxes are tables, and these tables are related on what we call foreign keys. So if this is, every user has a profile, right? So the Django has a built-in user-level object with some very basic information, first, last name, email, whether they can log into the back end, and that's about it. If you want to extend the realm of stuff you store about a user, you want to find out their bio information and where they live and everything, you create your own profile with your own custom set of fields, and you link it to the user object. In my case, so those first two are pretty much true on almost all Django sites. And then in my case, I wanted a profile to be able to have one or more lists. Right now, they just have one list per profile. And then that list consists of one or more items. So if you're looking at an item and you want to find out the email address of the person who owns that item, and then you've got some tables to be dancing through to sort of dance backwards through the chain. So this is how you would do it in an object-oriented system. It would be something like item.list.profile.user.email. So notice that we're combining table names and at the end a field on the table, and that's all transparent. I'll show you a comparison example to how you would do it in SQL in a minute. But everything inside of Django, whether you're in the template system or writing logic, is going to use that sort of basic notation. Django is what we call an MTV, model template view system, very similar to MVC. It's sort of a programming methodology that simply means that you have complete and total separation of data models, how your data is modeled, how it manifests in a database, how the templates are handled, where the logic of the site is, and URL matching. These things are all related and coupled any way you want them to be coupled, but all completely separate. So for example, a lot of content management systems, you end up putting a lot of logic into the templates. And Django tries to keep that limited to as little as possible, the very bare minimum of logic, and no actual programming. You need to do that. So everything goes in the right place. If you ever tried to build a content management system from scratch, you know that's very hard. It's a good goal, but it's very hard to keep things separated. And Django and Rails also really enforce keeping these things separated, which makes your code cleaner and more scalable and easier to change in the future. One of the coolest things about Django is something called the admin. So if I show you, is that big enough? Because I can crank this up. It's dark. Let me change to a different, I think idle is a nice, yeah, there we go. Is that easier to read? Okay. So this is how data modeling is done in Django. Basically, I define a class. This is the item class. And then I just start describing the fields. And they're either character fields or foreign keys to other tables, text fields, which are wide open, Boolean fields are on or off. We have date time fields, integer fields and decimal fields, and so on. So all these different field types. And then you have attributes for them, like maximum lengths, whether they're required, whether it's okay for them to be null in the database. So you basically just write this out in text, and you run a little command, and it then generates a table. I can't turn the font size up on this, but that is the database representation of the model. And I didn't have to do that manually. That was all one step. So once you've done that, something really cool happens, which is that the models you define get defined in the back end. You get immediate access to them on the back end in a sort of generic way, but that's sufficient for lots of situations. So the intranet at the J school where I work, we have the actual users back here in the admin doing most of their stuff. So if I look at one of the items, you can see, again, there's all those same fields. I can actually add items from the back end. I've got links to different user tables and what it was copied from, whether it has media, the creation date. Notice you get all the exact right widgets just based on the field type that was created. So basically, you get a very, very raw content management system for free. You don't have to do any work to get that. It's a huge time saver. Other systems have similar concepts, but none that I've seen either in Drupal or Rails or anything else are as good as this. And then it is customizable. One little small example of the customizability here would be this copy from field. So I think I showed you on the site where you can see, okay, 128 people want to passionately kiss in the rain. So that's because I'm tracking on every item the item it was ultimately copied from. So that's always sort of carried along with the item. Now, typically when we have a foreign key, meaning a database link in the code, it's going to draw a pick list. But because there's 100,000 items on the site, if I had to draw this page with a pick list at 100,000 select rows, it would make the page very, very slow. So I can just say, give this a raw ID field, which gives me this clever little lookup. So, they've thought of things like this for performance as well. Anyway, the admin is just a huge, huge time saver in a lot of situations. An object relational mapper is basically something that writes SQL, structured query language, for you, lets you do queries in a really simplified way that's as close as possible to natural language. So if you were to write raw SQL for that example I gave at the beginning, where I'm looking at an item and I want to get the email of the person who owns it and I have to traverse back through 4 tables, that whole first 5 lines is the SQL you would have to write to do that table traversal. But when you're writing the same query in Django, this is what we call a query set. I would say item.objects.filter, list under profile under user under username equals Shacker. And it does all the right things. It's still generating SQL on the back end, but I, as the developer, don't have to think about it. Now, that's good and bad, right? It's good because it's a time saver. It's bad because after 2.5 years of using Django, I'm forgetting how to do SQL. And this is the same argument we always have, like, should I learn JavaScript or should I just do jQuery? Because really, I just want the jQuery effects. And people are like, well, it's really important to learn JavaScript, and it's, it's so fundamental to so many things. And yep, they're right, except you just need to get some done, right? So, how many of you in this room can operate a manual choke on a car? A few, right? What a choke does has been automated away. It's been abstracted out. You know, and those of you who can remember probably feel like that's an important skill to have. Everybody should know how to use the choke. And those who've never had to use one, be like, why the heck would I have to do that manually? So this is what happens as technology evolves. We go to higher and higher levels of abstraction, and this is a beautiful thing.
Ask about how many of us wanted.
How many of you wanted to? No. Is there a question there? Oh, hold. She wants to record this. Need this? You got that? Okay. All right.
To the previous slide, going to the previous slide, it looks to me that pretty much is embedded in the filter, the structure of the table and stuff, right? So is that really an abstraction, or you have to kind of hard code all of those things?
Well, this works because I have defined the data models with foreign key relationships to each other. So, for example, well, if you look at this, it says I'm looking for an item, and the parameters are that the list it's in has to be in the profile. So if I look at the code, that's happening right here. So I'm looking at the class item, and a foreign key is defined as list. And so when Django's server starts up, it studies all of those relationships and figures them out and makes this API available. Does that answer your question? Basically, I mean, I didn't have to wire these up manually. What I had to do was I had to write the data models with these relationships. I define what's related to what, and it figures the rest out internally to make this kind of thing possible. Supports lots of databases, MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, SQLite, and then as of about 6 months ago, can also speak to multiple databases at once, either of the same type or different types. So you can work on, you know, big, high scalable sharded systems and things like that. Lots of caching options. You can cache either on the file system on the server, do caching in the database, use memcached for your Unix geeks, use local memory. You can cache the whole site. You can cache per view, which basically means per logic chunk, or just fragments of a template and arrange those however. So lots of options, and I clearly need to start doing more of this based on the bazingas. One of the things for me that tips the scales to Django over Rails, even though I mean Rails is awesome, I love it. Number one was the admin. Number two is that Python's been around for longer. It's been really big in scientific and math communities. And one of its mottos is batteries included. So any little subtask you can think of that needs doing, like sanitizing HTML inputs or parsing XML feeds or whatever, there's a library out there. You know, recently at work I needed to generate iCal feeds. So I was able to just sort of grab a Python library that generates ICS, point it at my event objects, and say, here's the date field, and you do the rest, and you know, it just works. So not everything has to be bundled in Django. There's both Python level reusable code, and there are Django reusable apps, which we'll get to in a second. One of the things I really love are clean URL structures, and I know this it's not very bright, is it? Let me bring that up in the source code. Okay, let's take this one. So that may look like some gobbledygook, but when you break it down, it's actually pretty logical. And what this says is, as every request comes into a Django system, the very first thing that happens is the URL is examined, so it can figure out what needs to happen. So this definition of a URL says anything that starts with bucketlist.org/I/ and then there's a string that is a word. So basically any word. In this case, my items are like P3Q1. So that'd be the URL. And then a trailing slash, and then that's the end of the URL. If that is detected, send it to this piece of code. In a project called Bucket, look for a Python module called views, within that a function called item view. And by the way, give this whole thing a name. And this is actually really powerful. So These are regular expression-based URLs. What's really awesome about this is that it protects you against so many kinds of SQL injection. Usually when you're trying to protect a site from SQL injection, you have to run all these tests and what kind of parameters will accept it and everything. Because you're just not, in most PHP systems, you're not defining the URLs up front. They're kind of based on just your file names. And here it's more abstract than that. You're defining the URLs. So, and then this whole thing will do reversal. So from any point in the site, if I want to link back to an item page, instead of hard coding the URL, I'll just do a template reversal to item view and give it the argument of the URL hash, and it'll go back to that detail page. The beauty part is that in the future, I may want to change this /i to /item. And I can do that in one place, in my URL definitions, and it doesn't matter how many pages on the site, everything will continue to just work. So I really like the URL system. Multilingual, built in, so it's really easy to build multilingual sites if you want to do that. I'm not going there. Data modeling is fun. I kind of gave you a tour already of that. So the equivalent in Django of WordPress plugins or Drupal modules or whatever is something called the reusable app. So in Django parlance, a site is a project, and a project consists of multiple applications. So on my site, I have one main application, which I just call Bucket, and that does most of my core site logic. I have another one called Registration, which is used for people, and that's a third-party app, which I just dropped into place. So people can create their logins. It checks if that username exists. It checks for password strength if I need to do that. It sends them an activation email. It handles when they click on that activation email. It handles when they forgot their password. So all that functionality, which virtually every site needs, you just drop in one reusable app. I have other minor ones for other smaller functions as well. So what they encourage with Django development is to really look hard at what you're building and not put it all in the same pool, to break it up into chunks, which could be their own freestanding apps, because you might want to reuse them, you might want to open source them, or you may just want to rearrange things on the site later and not have everything so tightly coupled. Using these reusable apps is not like using WordPress plugins, right? You don't I just dropped that thing into place and it was not that easy. I mean, you do have to do some of the wiring yourself, and they come with documentation. The downside of this is a lot of this stuff is written by rocket scientists, and they document it like rocket scientists. And and it's like, just give me the 1, 2, 3. How do I get up and running with this? And he's like, well, I documented the API in excruciating detail. And it's like, yeah, I couldn't make heads or tails of it, and you have to go to the internet and read blogs and things. So that can be, and that's not true of them all, just certain ones. Really clean template inheritance. It's just done so well. If you can do HTML, you can do Django templates. Again, very, very little logic in them. But the way things work is that instead of targeting some big master template and then say, if we're looking at an item view, then put this in. But if we're looking at this other view, put this in, and have all these conditionals. Instead, your logic code targets the innermost level of the template. So on the item view logic, the view code, I would send it to the item view template, which is an HTML fragment that starts with extends base. So it immediately goes in and grabs the master. And then we have these things called blocks. So the master will have these little empty spaces called blocks. And then on the inner templates, I define what should bubble up into the parent. So we're always going from the innermost to the outermost instead of the other way around. If I have like JavaScript I don't want to weigh down every single page with, I might only want it on separate pages. I can just have an extra head block. I define these, and then of course you usually have a block content. So this really makes it easy. If you do it really well, you can even say I want my my templates for my mobile site to inherit from the same things and just do the right overrides in the right places. Django also comes with really great form generation and validation. So I showed you the data modeling and how that gets reflected in the database. And then let's say you want to present a form for people to enter a new item that reflects all of those fields. So it could be as simple as this. I create a class called, this would be for editing the user's profile, and I say it's on the model profile. I can either say, give me all except exclude one, or just give me these. And bingo, so everything I've said about that form, just like I showed you the Django admin, how it put the right widgets on the right kinds of fields, it would do the same thing for the public field. And then in the view, I would just call the settings form and say, if somebody's pressed submit, process the submitted data that's bound to this form, and if they haven't, then just show me a naked one. It's more involved than that, but it does a really great job of validation, so I wouldn't say you don't have to think about that stuff, but again, this is going to give you a lot of protection from SQL injection and people putting bad stuff into forms. Django's just sort of handling all that for you on the back end. And the parameters for the validation are going to be the parameters that you defined when you looked at the model code. So for example, this, well, they wouldn't get a field for that. So the title is going to be max length 140 in the database, and the form is also going to enforce 140 for the maximum length. A Boolean field is automatically going to get radio buttons and so on and so on. Extensible authentication, so there's a login system built in, but can easily tie to other systems, like Facebook or Twitter or LDAP, or you might write your own. Your organization might have one that you need to tie to. I talked already about how you get automatic RSS feeds from any view or comments on any object. Really nice community, sophisticated developers. Django developers tend to have people who've been through the trenches, and they've just gotten fed up with the PHP world or whatever other language, and they've been around the block, and yet they're very willing to help. Like any platform, there's mailing lists and IRC and blogs where you can get lots of help. Lots of tutorials out there, lots written. 4 or 5 really good Django books exist. Disadvantages, being totally honest, Django is not as big as WordPress or Drupal or even Rails. So there's less traction out there, which means that it is going to be harder to find qualified developers if that need should arrive. And it also has sometimes implications on things like when you go looking for a reusable app. At work I needed a really good survey tool to build into our site, and I found exactly one reusable survey app for Django, and it wasn't that good. And I know if I was doing PHP that day, I would have had a dozen to choose from, and they all would have been mature. So that can be a little frustrating. You end up having to, sew up the edges yourself. App docs can be opaque, and then get ready to write code. So, one of the reasons that WordPress and Drupal are popular is because you can do quite a bit without writing a single line of code, for better and for worse. This is a system for coders, right? There's no drag and drop anything. So the basic workflow, I kind of have shown you this already. Define the data model, make sure it's working in the admin, which by the way is a great way for just testing and development of your data models because you get to see it reflected immediately. Define a URL with a regular expression, have that point to a piece of view code or business logic, and then that view code will create variables which are objects because everything in Python is an object, the smallest, tiniest variable, and send those objects to templates where you display them. I talked already about the filter I wrote to clean titles and detect if things have media. Oh, looks like that's it. So at this point, we can either chat or I have a little code walkthrough I could do if that's not boring, or maybe you have questions or want to talk about something totally unrelated.
Have you looked?
Sorry.
Did you look into CodeIgniter?
Look into what?
CodeIgniter, the PHP MVC framework, which is a very lightweight.
Oh, CodeIgniter. Yes. We actually were thinking about using that for the J School, and the closer we looked at it, the more we liked Django. Yeah. I mean, CodeIgniter is good, but A, we were tired of PHP, and B, this looked a lot more powerful and flexible.
Can I ask what's that font in your text
Isn't it cool? I know. It's I subscribe to SitePoint, and I was doing some of their tutorials, and the developer doing and I actually posted in their forums, "What's that font?" And the answer is called Monofur, and it's free. You just search for, I don't know if you can read that, Monofur. Monofur.
On the web, okay. It's not a part of the Apple OS.
No. It's free. Mhm.
So my question is about cleaning the titles. You said that you'd stripped out all the cases and then started with the sentence casing, but what if somebody says, that there are bucket list items to climb Mount Everest? How do you accommodate for that?
If they said the goal was to...
Climb Mount Everest?
Uh-huh. Oh. I'm trying to remember now. That's a really good question. Maybe I didn't lowercase everything. I have to delete these pretend goals when I'm done here. I can spell with my glasses on. That's preserved. Let's take a look at the code that does that. It's been months. Let's see if I can remember. Clean title. So strip tags. Oh, so this is a cool little thing, just as an aside, the strip tags here. So that is one of the little pieces of the template language. And what I do in the Python is I import the model, the module called strip tags from the template language and use it in the view. So I just basically can run it. So that'll take all the HTML out. And then we remove any number of digits and punctuation marks from the start of the title with this little regular expression substitution. And then I strip anytime there's two spaces, and I strip any let's see, just periods? But Mount Everest stayed. Let's see, what's that doing? Title dots. Oh, strip only gets it from the end, right? Because some people were treating them like sentences. They were putting periods on the end. And then, with what's left, I just capitalize the beginning. So I may have lied. Let me try putting something in all caps. So I don't do that. Sorry. Good question, you caught me. Let's just delete that right now. More questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you guys want a code walkthrough, or are you tired and bored?
Yeah? Yeah, let's applaud this part. And you can stay on.
Maybe we can liberate people if they feel.
Yeah, nobody should feel compelled to stay.
I think